If you're just getting to our wrap-up channel, by the way, the wrap-up show channel here on YouTube, and you haven't subscribed, the reason to subscribe is we're doing year-round exclusive Padres content, live chats, taped videos, looks at free agencies, free agent possibilities for the Padres, hot stove, spring training, regular season. I mean, everything you want. If you're a Padres fan, you're looking for more content, that's why we're here. Hit that subscribe button. It's down below. Hit the notification bell as well. Like these videos. If you're here right now, please give us a like. Follow us on Twitter at John Schaefer, at Jim Russell SD. Here's the $180 million question for me, Jim. Can AJ Preller prove that he's able to work with a veteran manager? So that's the big question for me. Can AJ Preller work with a veteran manager? Because he's had the opportunity before. It did not work out with Bud Black. The last 6 seasons have been with rookie managers, so to speak. Andy Green for 4 years and Jace Tingler for these last 2 years. Yeah, 2020 worked out. 2021 was a complete train wreck. So that jury is still out. What happens now that Preller has the 60-year-old that has won previously? It's easy to say right now that everything's going to work out perfectly, but the last time he had someone like this, and I think there's some comparisons that can be made with Bud Black and Bob Melvin, if I'm being honest. The roster was different, absolutely, than it is right now. But that's a big question for me, Jim. Like, how will AJ Preller work with a manager that has won before and might have the ability to have a little more sway in some of these conversations with the front office than a rookie manager?
Well, look, he has no choice. He has to work with Bob Melvin. Like, this is his last guy. And by that, I mean, he has to make it work. Because if it were up to me and you have to choose between AJ Preller or Bob Melvin, I'm choosing Bob Melvin every single day of the week. Like, that's the reality of everything right now. So I'm not saying that Preller has to take a step back. I'm not saying that Preller has to concede power within, the organization to Bob Melvin or anything like that. I'm saying that, he has to work well with Bob. Like, when you work with somebody and you're told, like, just make it work. You have to make it work, or you're gone. Right. That's a real thing in today's world, is like, you're kind of sometimes forced to work well or work at least nice. Those the play nice with others type of thing. Like, you're sometimes you're forced to work with other people you may not like to work with, but in the end, it works out. That's the type of thing here with AJ Preller is, while I think that he's going to eventually, and he probably already has, like, working well with Bob Melvin, the type of manager Bob Melvin is not the type of manager that we have seen AJ Preller gush over. And he's the type of manager that he fired when he first got here. Like, Bob Melvin, to me, his personality kind of reminds me of Bud Black. We had Mark Sweeney on today with Darren, and he mentioned the same thing, as Bob Melvin reminds him of Bud Black. And Bud Black was the first guy here when AJ Preller became the GM, and he fired him within a couple months. So that relationship, the Preller and Melvin relationship, like, it has no choice for AJ but to work. He has to make it work. And this is up to him.
And
Bob's going to be who he is.
And I will say, and I was going to say, not to cut you off, that there's a reason to believe that AJ Preller wants it as much as Bob Melvin, because you're calling Billy Beane. I mean, you're calling Billy Beane and trying to get something accomplished that other teams have not been able to do, including the New York Yankees.
To make it work.
Yeah, after the 2018 season. So, like, I don't think AJ Preller was kidding when Billy Beane said there's no chance in hell that we're going to let him walk. And then he probably hung up the phone and said, you know what, let me call Bob. We've got this 10.5-year relationship. He's won a lot of games for me. I understand the constraints of Oakland, which, by the way, Bob Melvin spoke about today without being critical of Oakland. And I give AJ Preller a lot of credit for being very complimentary of ownership and the president of baseball operations, Billy Beane, for what they did in letting Bob Melvin walk. But the fact that you could get this guy right now is, what do they say about good luck? It's like when preparation meets opportunity. It's the right time. This wasn't getting done in 2018. You weren't getting Bob Melvin when Jace Tingler was hired in 2020. They were coming off a 98-win season in 2019. So you weren't getting it done then. And if you think about where the A's are right now, we've mentioned all these points, they're also coming off of a disappointing year. They only won 86 games. They should have gotten to the postseason and didn't.
That disappointing, though?
It was disappointing because they were in playoff contention most of the year.
It'd be great for the Padres the way they ended, but I get your point.
Yeah, I mean, my point is this: if you couldn't make the postseason this year and you're Oakland, and the ownership has said we are cutting payroll, and I think, by the way, allowing Bob Melvin to walk is part of the cutting payroll. He was making $4 million a year. I think they'll hire someone for 800 grand, and I think they'll save
Mhm.
the $3 million, realizing that the difference between one manager and the other isn't going to be much if we're going to be a rebuilding club in 2022 and 2023. So I give AJ Preller credit, to be honest with you, for finding a way to make this work. Now he's got to make it work in season for those 162 games, and it can't work through June or July or even September. It's got to even work in October. And the goal isn't, and Bob Melvin said this today, the goal is not to get to the postseason. They got to win games in the postseason. If there's a knock on Bob Melvin, and I had Jessica Kleinschmidt on today, who covered the A's for forever, NBC Bay Area. She said, I don't think it's a fair knock to say he's 10-17 in the postseason. I think find me a manager that's done more with less. And I think that's reasonable. But they need to get in and they need to win series. And hopefully they're able to do that in 2022.
Right, and the thing with AJ Preller is, you know, you have, like you said, you have to create your own luck sometimes. And at the time, you might not even know what you're doing as far as like you're in a position where you need a new manager and you just fired your friend and Jace Tingler, and you're looking at the pool of potential candidates, and you're thinking to yourself, well, we like them, but there's still question marks with these guys, and maybe I wish we kept, Jace Tingler. So maybe, not knowing what really was happening as far as, okay, the collapse goes, and then you have to fire Tingler, and then you're looking for a manager, and oh, by the way, the A's are, messing up their situation with the city, and they're probably going to move to Las Vegas, and then they're going to have to go through a massive rebuild again. Like, I bet you AJ Preller had no idea, like, the luck he was going to run into when he got a call from Bob Melvin, or he made a call to Billy Bean, or however it came about, like however this relationship came about. But in the end, you got to give credit to AJ Preller for creating that type of luck. And it might sound weird to say that, because it's like, dude, he just went through another season where his team underachieved and won, didn't finish above 500. How can you give him credit? Well, you know, being lucky is sometimes better than being good. And in this case, they got lucky. They got really lucky. This guy is a top 5 manager in baseball. This guy potentially, and I know he doesn't have the credentials of Dave Roberts, he's potentially the best manager in the division now. You can make a case for Bob Melvin as the best manager in the NL West, even though he has not won a World Series, even though he is not, coming off a division title with like Gabe Kapler. Like, this guy is one of the top 5, top 7, top 8 managers in baseball. And Preller, he closed the deal and he got lucky. And it's fine to say that. Like, it's fine to say we got lucky with this, but you know what?
Mm-hmm.
We
If
ended
it,
up closing it, and
yeah,
that's all that matters.
yeah, if it benefits the Padres, I'm with you. And this is with all due respect, honestly, to Jace Tingler. He could be a fine manager at one point, and I think he deserves credit for 2020. But I don't think a lot of people would argue with me if I said that he was the 5th best manager in the division. And that's not really being critical. I mean, I think Dave Roberts, the winningest manager in the history of the sport, Gabe Kapler off a 107 win season, Bud Black with his credentials and resume, Torey Lovullo, who I know personally, and I have a high level of respect for. I think the Arizona Diamondbacks do as well, considering he got an extension off a 50-win year.
Mm-hmm.
I think that tells you all you need to know about Torey Lovullo, who's a veteran manager, and I think is going to do good things at some point in Arizona. And if he doesn't, he'll do it elsewhere. I think Jace Tingler was probably the 5th best
Mm-hmm.
manager in the division. I'm with you. I think you could argue now the dynamic completely changes. What impact does that have? We'll see. But he's going to be considered as good of a manager as there is in the division. That's not that he's better than Dave Roberts or Gabe Kapler, but he's not going to be considered to be worse than
Mm-hmm.
either of those two managers. So it's a significant upgrade, not with the roster, but on the bench at the manager position.
I don't have all the names in front of me, but just thinking about the National League West and the names that you just read off there, like Bud Black, Torey Lovullo, Bob Melvin, Gabe Kapler, Dave Roberts. Is this the best division in baseball as far as managers go?
I mean, it would have to be. I mean, how could it not be? I
AL
mean,
East
how
is
could
pretty good, but I don't know who's the manager of the Orioles. The Orioles are like really bad. Um,
yeah,
the
who's in
Central,
I mean, it's right. It's right there. I mean, there's no
I mean,
question
if
it's
you're
right there.
thinking of the top managers in baseball right now, 3 of them are in the National League West.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
like you
another
said.
one, Bud Black and Lovello, like, they're pretty good as well, like you said. And I know that Arizona had a crappy year, but still, he got an extension, and that says something about a guy that just lost 100+ games.